tactic test in... No, wait, wrong video. Hello everyone, and welcome to a different project that isn't tactic testing with me, Kippa, and I'm going to be looking at why it's a good idea, or why might it be a good idea to manage each of the 20 current Premier League teams in the new Football Manager. So looking forward for the next one, the teams that will be in the Premier League, why it would be a good idea. It's my opinion for all of this. I'm going to have a look at sort of like some details about the club and my opinion about them, the squad, and etc. So, you know, there's nothing personal against any of them. I've got no affiliation or any dislike for all of them. I'm a fan of football in general, fan of the Premier League, and I'm just going to have a look sort of like, you know, at each of them and just see why it might be a fun save if you're sort of like thinking, who should I be in the Football Manager, why it might be a fun save, what challenges you might face with each of those Premier League sides. So first of all, alphabetically, we have Arsenal, who were formed in 1886, originally named Dial Square, turning into the Royal Arsenal, and then they changed their name when they moved to Woolwich Arsenal, and they became the Arsenal in 1913, though basically everyone only uses Arsenal. They have some good history, some good trophy wins, 13 league wins overall in their history, 3 of those in the Premier League, 14 FA Cups, which is the most FA Cups won by a single side. The last win coming back in the 1920 season under actually current manager Arteta. 2 League Cups in 87 and 93, a UEFA Euro League, and a Cup Winners' Cup. I'm sure most people know, but they do play at the Emirates Stadium with just over 60,000 capacity. I know the Premier League isn't the be-all and end-all, but obviously it's the league they're in, and arguably maybe not necessarily just the successful period for them, but at least the most memorable because of the Invincible season. Obviously, how could anyone forget a team going undefeated all season and winning the Premier League at the same time? Their third Premier League under Arsene Wenger as well. Also, whilst at it, while they've been in the Premier League, though, they've had some of the best players ever to grace the league. I know they've had other players in the past, but some of the best players ever to grace the league, particularly sort of like the likes of Thierry Henry and Bergkamp, amazing footballers. Thierry Henry smashing their goal scoring records as well. Sol Campbell, I think, was a heck of a defender. Made the divide, a very diversive sort of figure, sort of like to some, maybe even still now, but a heck of a defender nevertheless. Patrick Vieira, their captain, very passionate, some good battles he had in the Premier League as well. Van Persie, Pires, Lundberg, I mean there's all sorts really, but Ashley Cole as well, although he obviously maybe devises or fans as well because he left for Chelsea, but still nevertheless he was a heck of a player for them. Recent times though, unfortunately, Arsenal seem to have dipped away from those glory days, finishing 8th last season outside of the European places, consecutive seasons now, twice. Before that there was Europa League football for 2 seasons. They had previously qualified for the Champions League in 19 successive seasons, obviously getting to a final in one of those, unfortunately not winning, but so they've got storied history in the Premier League, and it's disappointing for their fans, especially to see them sort of like sink so low. I know other fans probably not so bothered, but at the same time it's a little bit disappointing and frustrating for them. So what's going on? Well, I mean, I'm obviously fans of Arsenal maybe know a bit better than I have, but from an outsider looking in, it does seem to be a little bit seems to be quite negative, at least maybe not quite after the result of the weekend where they beat Tottenham, but in recent times it's sort of like negative vibes coming from the club fans, or at least they don't seem to be massively happy with the board necessarily. I'm not sure if it's the investment as such or just the decisions they make. That's also a little bit frustrating with the results. I mean, generally, the results obviously have to be at the forefront, and they're not good either. Recruitment in the past, maybe this season is a bit more cause for optimism, but previous seasons have not really recruited fantastically well. They were the highest spenders this transfer window, so that has been a bit optimistic for this season. The only thing is, unfortunately, they haven't quite started maybe as they would have expected to, losing to Brentford. Losing to Chelsea, Man City, I think the only disappointing thing really is just the manner of the way they lost, because they were absolutely poor and basically just got bullied, and they were not competitive really in either of those two games, not truly. And I think that's the disappointing thing. Narrow 1-0 wins back to back against Norwich and Burnley sort of like took them off the bottom of the table, though that not really perfect performances either, very close, and a VAR decision needed to get them the win against Burnley. Otherwise, who knows how that would have gone if they'd have had that penalty. But they did beat Tottenham at the weekend, just gone, and that means they now have 9 points mid-table. Again, they definitely do have aspirations of being higher than that. So it's a mixed bag so far. But any further sort of like hindrances, another loss and that soon could turn sour again. So looking at the team then, they've got quite a young squad after this transfer window, with a lot of players sort of like being the younger part of their 20s. The average age is 25. I've worked that out purely from sort of like the average age of the players listed in the squad here. The captain, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, top class forward on his day. Sort of like he hasn't had the best season last season, not quite started well this one, or not perfectly this one, but sort of like a couple of goals in the last few games is now sort of like, giving cause that he might be returning back to his best. And if he can stay back to his best or keep the ammunition getting to him, then he could easily score over 20 plus goals, which he has done previously, and he is a top class forward. The rest of the team, or a little look at some other players of the team. They have two good youth prospects from their own ranks, Bukayo Saka and Emile Smith-Rowe, both of which have come through in the last few seasons, and both have done extremely well and deserving of their lower squad numbers. Saka with the number 7, Smith-Rowe with number 10. And they'll be looking to those sort of like basically as mainstays for the years to come, I would say. Smith-Rowe impressed me last season. I mean, I know I'm not a former player, but he impressed me. I like the way he plays. I think he could potentially be giving Gareth Southgate a headache for those kind of centre attacking midfielder kind of, or maybe even wide attacking positions for future squads. I mean, some of his performances have been, or at least last season, were very good. Bukayo Saka, we know, sort of like can play in multiple positions, and he gives 110% whenever he's playing, and that's the same for England and for Arsenal. So they will be relying on them to have consistent seasons this season. Ben White, £50 million thereabouts. Strong couple of breakout seasons with Leeds United and Brighton. Good, even though Brighton didn't finish too high up in the Premier League, he's still sort of like highly rated and played pretty well for them last season. So Arsenal will be looking for him to become part of their back line for the future, and hoping that he can settle in and gel and form a good partnership with Gabriel. Or at least that's who I suspect that they'll be looking to partner him with. Then they'll be looking for the magic, the creativity, the guile of Martin Odegaard, who they've turned their loan into a permanent transfer. There was a point where it wasn't looking necessarily like it was going to happen, but it has. So he's back at the Arsenal, and they're hoping that the form that he exhibited in the loan spell carries on into this campaign. And if the ammunition's right, then the players will score, and then they can get back up the league. The only thing is, personally to me, I think their squad depth isn't the great. I think there's a bunch of players, I mean, I've ticked them here, who either haven't performed quite to the standard that Arsenal need, or just not necessarily at that level. It's no disrespect to those players, and I know some fans maybe do like them, some fans maybe won't, or just won't disagree with me, but I'm just not sure that the players highlighted are necessarily right for Arsenal. Pepe is a talent, however. There has been moments where he does look like one of those good inside forwards, or in wingers, those kind of forwarding players. Possibly it's the type of football, or maybe just it's not quite clicked for him yet. So there's scope for him, but I'm just not sure about the rest of them. Perhaps they can prove me wrong. Maybe they can. I'd like to see it. Fan of the game. I don't like to sort of like bash people unnecessarily, but maybe they would do better at other clubs. Who knows? So managing Arsenal might be okay. We're having a look at. There's several reasons why it might be a good idea. I think you could potentially consider Arsenal as a fallen giant. I mean, they have won the league 13 times in their history. They had obviously the invincible season. So you've got to look really and say that sort of like, potentially fallen giant. So can you restore them to their former glories? Can you restore them back to European football? Can you restore them to actually being the better club in North London? I mean, the last few seasons they fell behind and finishing below Spurs, which if you're an Arsenal fan is not really acceptable, regardless of sort of like, finishing outside Europe or anything. They just hate, they definitely hate finishing behind Spurs. So basically, it's a rebuild job. So can you rebuild them either with the squad, or can you sort of like move on a few players, and can you work some magic and get them back to where they feel that they should be? That's especially at the start of this season, because they started quite poorly. I mean, that definitely does seem like a lot of people then sort of jumped on and was just like, right, I'm rebuilding Arsenal, and that's a good reason. That's a good strong reason why in FM22 that might be a good reason to pick them. Can you get Aubameyang to work with Lacazette in a 4-4-2? Do you want to use a 4-2-3-1? Do you want to use a 4-3-3? Who knows? There's multiple ways that you can try and do this, but rebuilding them. I would hope that in the new FM, it's actually difficult to sell players who actually do perform badly or do have sort of like these poor traits, because it isn't too tricky necessarily to move some players on in Football Manager, and I think it would be nice addition, in my opinion, to sort of like if a player isn't being used or is sort of like inconsistent in form, that less clubs sort of like do come in for him, even sort of like overseas ones, because that's what happens in real life. So maybe getting rid of some of the deadwood might be more difficult, but who knows? It's a rebuild job, and it could be a very interesting story to take on. Secondly, it could be, I think it was a good one actually, because I've started enjoying working with sort of like the younger players in Football Manager, trying to actually sign sort of like, instead of younger ready-made ones, sign younger players and sort of like build them up to become stars within your team. And Arsenal certainly have a lot of players who sort of like, you could potentially build and mould. Like I said, the average age is 25, and a lot of them, looking at the highlighted of them, are under 25 and have work you could do to actually improve them even more than they are now. Maybe Pepe is tipping the sort of like point at 25, Chambers maybe the same, but those sort of like 24 younger, you might be able to, or should be able to, sort of like build them up into, you could retrain them, get them to how you need them to be, and that's or build a, and build a golden generation, a new golden generation for Arsenal. With your likes of Saka and Nketiah and Smith Rowe, with Odegaard and with Ben White and Gabriel, can you form a dominant team for years to come? And finally, an interesting, a different spin on it, because I think one of the things people forget is the transfer budgets at the start of the game. Because Arsenal spent a lot of money this one, I would be surprised if they actually had a big transfer budget with the start of FM22. So it looks like if you take the role of Arsenal head coach, then you may have to make do with the team as it is, irregardless of whether you want to rebuild, whether you want to use young players, or what you want to do. So if you are like actually Antonio Conte and you prefer ready-made stars, you may have to try and have a good first season anyway with the younger squad and try and build them up as best as you can to sell on for profit. And that's an interesting thing. Some people do that as saves just to try and make a club rich. Arsenal, obviously, being in England and being in London, are sort of like pretty wealthy anyway. So there's sort of like good scope for that. Can you make them more financially viable than, say, like your Man City and PSG? So, could you go have a good first season, sell on the players? I mean, for example, in FM21, I've loaded up the update. It's saying that their balance is 150 million. After the first season, selling a lot of players, I mean, you could potentially double or triple that if you do have a good first season and sell the right players for the right money. It's possible, I think. So, can you make them extremely rich? And then do you want to reinvest in sort of like, youth? Do you want to wire the world and try and find younger players and build up just the money, because why not? Or do you want to sort of like have the good first season and then bring in your ready-made stars as part of your rebuild? Who knows? It's your FM. I think Arsenal are a good challenge because there are multiple of reasons why you could be that manager, and a multiple of challenges you could set yourself to try and achieve. I mean, a good one, obviously, regardless of whether you're doing youth, rebuild, etc., is to actually just try and replicate the invincible season at some point. They've done it once. Can you do that again? Can you get them to achieving that phenomenal feat once more? It's extremely difficult, but it's a challenge nevertheless, and a fun one at that, I think. So that's my reasons for managing Arsenal in FM22. What I've done is I've had a look at, I've used the update, I've made a little tactic myself to try and achieve something with them on this current FM, obviously because I don't have 22 yet, it's not out yet. So let's see what I've done. I've managed to get them back into European football, 77 points, 5th place, which I think is actually pretty decent considering really the powers or the squads that Liverpool, Man United, Man City and Chelsea have. Though I can see that for some reason Aston Villa have absolutely dominated the league, coming second, beating both Manchester clubs. That's absolutely insane. Chelsea finishing 12th. I'm pretty sure Tuchel would be sacked if that's how he was if that's what they did in real life. Most certainly. So can you get back into Europe? Well, I have probably not done as well elsewhere. Definitely not. I mean, third round, Manchester United, possibly fair. Third round against Wolves, disappointing in that one. Would hope for a cup run, especially in the FA Cup, to try and add another one to the cabinet. Community Shield, they're not actually in that, so obviously FM21, I mean, there's only so much that they can change with the update. But so that's not really relevant. That would have been nice to have just won something though. So stats, we'll have a look then. What did I do? Or what the stats? So Odegaard with 13 assists. I'd probably be hoping for better assist tallies there really with them, but Odegaard 13, so that's fine. That seems like a decent number. Smith Rowe with 9, Saka with 8. Yep, trying to get the best out of them two. Maybe not necessarily the best as such, but I've at least got some reasonable figures from them. Goals wise, well, I've achieved that part as well. So I've said that if Aubameyang can be fed, if he can get given the chances, he will score. And I've got 42 goals in 42 games from him. So I'm pleased with that. That seems like something. That seems like some kind of positive season. I think if you asked an Arsenal fan, would you take 5th right now? Surely most of them would say yes. Maybe others would be just like no, but I expect nothing less than Champions League. But I think 5th place would actually be fair, to be honest. And I'm happy with that. Have a quick look to show you what I've gone with. I've gone with Leno in goal as the stocks. I've locked in the team. Leno in goal. Actually, probably should have gone with sweeper keeper really for him. I know in real life, Ramsdale gone in. Maybe I should have gone with him, but I wasn't sure really how well he would adjust and whether he would be played what he was. But Leno I've gone with. Wing back of Tierney. Wing back Tomiyasu. Ball playing defenders for the both because Arteta does like them to play out the back. Ball winning midfielder with Thomas Partey because I think he actually is really important to Arsenal in real life, and I think he actually does need to be playing. They need to keep him fit to get him to screen that back. Especially, I mean, they're both 22. No doubt they could form a good partnership. They both individually have the talent, but I think for now they do need an experienced head to screen. Odegaard, I've gone with a deep line playmaker purely because when I was getting through the season, Arsenal were shipping a few to sort of start off with. It wasn't quite as solid as I'd liked, so I had to sort of like keep a bit more shape. Maybe we would have had more assists and goals if I'd have done something different, but this is what I've gone with. Central midfielder on support, again, maybe that's a little bit too defensive. Maybe need a bit more oomph going forwards, but I've gone with Lokonga as a central midfielder, keep a bit more balance and sort of like keep some kind of shape there. But he is sort of like meant to be covering this kind of ball and going forward as well. Smith Rowe, I think, is a playmaker. I don't think he's an inside forward or a winger or anything like that, although that might have balanced the tactic a bit better. But I've got him as an advanced playmaker, hopefully sort of like feeding Aubameyang quite a lot, and Saka, although it's not quite necessarily translated. Obviously, we've seen the stats. Inverted winger for Saka, because I'm not quite sure he's a forward. I do think he's more of a sort of like winger, that kind of role personally, but advanced forward for Aubameyang. He's got the pace and everything. I just want him to go lead the line, and that's what we've done, and that's where we've at with my interpretation, with my attempt to trying to do well with Arsenal. We've got 5th place. We're back in Europe, so I'm happy with that. Maybe you can do better with the update. Maybe you can do better with FM22. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to find out, your reasons maybe for using Arsenal. But that's mine. Thank you for watching, and we'll be looking at Aston Villa in due course. Thank you, everyone.